Committee. I'm Councillor Barry Pierpoint. I'm the chairman of this committee, and my vice chairman, Councillor James Cantwell, is to my right. Before we move into the preliminary items of this evening's agenda, I need to run through a few housekeeping details. I'd like to remind everyone in attendance this evening that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. Please ensure that you use the microphone system at all times when addressing the meeting. You do not need to move or adjust the microphones, just simply raise your hand as usual, wait to be called, and then press the central button to activate your microphone before speaking. Speak clearly and directly so everyone in the room, remote participants and recordings, can hear you. When finished, press the button again to turn it off. Don't forget to switch it off. Thank you for your cooperation as we all get used to the new system. And don't forget, please, to switch off your mobile phones or set them to silent mode. We've got no members of the public attending, so I can move straight on. Finally, please be advised that abuse or intimidation of any kind will not be tolerated. Any disturbance will result in the meeting being adjourned. Anyone who is deemed to breach these requirements will be warned and asked to refrain. And if the behaviour persists, they'll be required to leave the meeting. Now I'll move to part one of the agenda, the preliminaries. Apologies for absence. Are there any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillor Lena Savickian and co-opted independent member Gideon Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare any interest in respect of any items on the agenda? No, thank you. Minutes. Do I have the committee's permission to sign the meeting minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of October 2025? Thank you. Are there any outstanding actions from the last meeting?
Thank you, Chair. The action sheet from the meeting held on the 13th of October 2025 was circulated with the agenda, and there are no outstanding actions.
Thank you. There's no questions. Are there questions from members of the public? I don't think so, is there?
There are none for this meeting, Chair.
Thank you. That concludes the preliminaries. We'll now move to part two of the agenda items. We're going to ask Martin Gibbs, who's actually on live streaming with us. Martin's going to do his report first, and if hope you don't mind, I brought Martin's item forward to the start of the agenda. So Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Hugely appreciated. Welcome also. Good evening. Today I'm bringing proposed amendments to the contract procedurals to the committee for your approval, review and comments ahead of it going through to Cabinet and then for full council for approval. To provide some background initially, the purpose of these amendments
We've lost you, Martin, at the moment, so you can just bear with us.
A terrible start. We'll start again. Apologies. So to provide some background, just for the purpose of these amendments, it is twofold. The first reason being that the public procurement legislation has changed, with the Procurement Act 2023 being in place since February 2025. And whilst the current contract procedurals are compliant with this legislation, the proposed amendments include additions and amendments to further align the contract procedurals with the Procurement Act 2023. In addition to this, the last time the contract procedurals were updated were 3 years ago, meaning they were due for review soon. Appendix 1A, which starts at page 267 and runs through to 285, shows the clean version of the proposed amendments, whereas Appendix 1B, which are pages 287 to 313, show the track changes version. I don't propose to go through this page by page, as I'm going to highlight the key changes at Appendix 3. What I will briefly note, though, is following a recent meeting with the East Lindsey Constitutional Working Group, there's been one minor amendment to section 1.5 of Appendix 1A, which can be seen at page 291, and it's now proposed to read as all values referred to in these rules are inclusive of VAT, excluding the table at 13.3, where it explicitly notes the exclusive of VAT figures too. And in addition to this, following the South Holland Governance and Audit Committee earlier this week, there's been a minor amendment to section 1.6 of Appendix 1A, so still at page 291, and it's now proposed to read, the responsible officer must inform the head of procurement and contracts as soon as they're aware of the breach. Appendix 2, which are pages 315 to 318, then detail the delegations to officers. Please note the only change proposed here is to align the figures within this document with the proposed threshold changes within the contract procedurals. I'm now going to go through Appendix 3, which starts at page 319 to highlight the key changes. So to start off with the introduction. So in the current iteration, there is no introduction, and it was felt that this would be beneficial to provide an introductory section detailing what these rules are and the purpose behind them. And then within the section relating to relevant contracts, we've added a section explaining in a bit more detail what a grant versus a procurement requirement is. And we've made it clear that where there's any clarity required to contact my team. We've added a couple of sections, section 5, which is the conflict of interest, and section 6, which is the pre-market engagement, to provide clear details of what officers are required to do and can do with regards to both of these topics within a procurement process. I have proposed one additional exemption circumstance, and this is, I'm going to read it fully. So where an existing contract is being reprocured and there are delays to that procurement process, which means that the contract cannot start at the expiry of the existing contract, and this exemption cannot be longer than 6 months and cannot make a contract a convertible contract under the Procurement Act 2023 by exceeding the applicable threshold. So we've added this to propose enabling a compliance approach where unexpected delays occur as part of the procurement process. We've also made additions adding frameworks and dynamic markets in line with the Procurement Act 2023 to ensure officers comply with the new legislation. And we've looked to propose increasing the thresholds. So just to note that the figures at Appendix 3 are inclusive of VAT in the middle column, but exclusive of VAT in the left column, making the increases look larger than what they are. So to have a like for like, so please refer to the table within Appendix 1A at page 276 to see the comparable exclusive of VAT increases, which I'll now go through in detail. So what was currently £0 to £5,000, or what is currently, sorry, £0 to £5,000 is now being proposed at £0 to £6,250 with no changes to the tendering procedure. What was £5,000 to £10,000 is now being proposed at £6,250 to £12,500, and again, no changes to the tendering procedure. What was £10,000 to £40,000 is now being proposed £12,500 to £50,000, again with no changes to the tendering procedure. What was £40,000 up to £85,000 is now being proposed at £50,000 to £100,000, and we've proposed an amendment to change from at least 5 written quotations to 3, as 5 quotations has been difficult to source in certain industries. And we've also received supplier feedback from local suppliers in particular that they feel that there's sometimes no resource in place to quote at times against lots of other suppliers, as they don't have a resource to undertake a 1 in 5 chance of winning as they see it, and that's the kind of engagement we're getting. We've also proposed that same threshold potential for more flexibility with regards to the procurement process at this value. So currently what is a request for quotation only, which is essentially a document slightly simpler than an invitation to tender, is the only option. And what we've noted again through engagement with suppliers, particularly local suppliers, that this can be quite off-putting and bureaucratic with lots of documentation, where in reality they could provide a quotation and quite amply provide the service or goods, etc. that is required. So therefore we've proposed that alternative processes, ensuring there's still a minimum of 3 quotations being sought regardless, can be undertaken, noting that it requires my team's approval, as this value and upwards is where my team must be involved. Moving on to the higher thresholds. So what is currently 85,000 up to the PA23 thresholds is now £100,000 up to the thresholds with no changes to the tendering procedure, and then above the thresholds there's also no changes. We've removed the assets for disposal section, as this is covered within the finance procedurals, which is considered to be the appropriate place for this. We've also added more details in regarding contract management and contract monitoring, ensuring that operational contract managers are monitoring contract performance, meeting with suppliers regularly as per the contract, and that there is a named contract manager on the contract register. We've also added a section regarding contract modifications, ensuring a clear process regarding contract changes and variations. And finally, we've made additions in the section regarding post-contract monitoring and evaluation in line with the Procurement Act 2023 regarding the publishing of mandatory notices. Thanks very much for your time this evening, and thanks again, Chair, for letting this go first. I welcome any questions or comments regarding the proposed amendments.
Thank you, Martin. Are there any questions? Councillor Woodliff.
Is that right? Good. Thank you much. I didn't catch your name. Was it Mr. Gibb? Martin, right? For the explanations. I'm just looking at page 312, and it says here, it says 26.5, where the total value of the contract exceeds and have gone from 85,000 to 1 million. The officer must make a written report evaluating the extent to which the purchasing need and contract should be met by contract. That's a huge actually increase, and go from £85,000 to £1 million. I'd thought actually that I would expect an officer to make a written report evaluating the extent to which the purchasing need and contract objectives have been met would have been to keep it a bit lower than £1 million. I mean, what's the rationale behind that? To go from £85,000 to £1 million?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Woodliff. Yeah, so the rationale was simply we wanted to aim it on strategic projects, so the strategic contracts. It is something that we are learning lessons from contracts as usual, as normal, but for a rule of regulation within the Constitution, we wanted to focus that on the strategic high value projects. That's the simple reason.
Any further question?
Don't really understand why that's so. I'd have thought monitoring a product of contracts is essential. The officer must make a written report evaluating the extent to which the purchasing need and contract objectives have been met. And so where the total value of the contract exceeds £1 million, yeah. The answer really meets that.
I think he's giving you your answer. Or you want to ask a question off the back of that?
Because I'm surprised. I'm surprised.
Martin, obviously for these very large contracts, we're talking about £1 million here. What the monitoring must be very strict and tight, surely, for that sort of amount of money that we are, spending. And really give us some insurance in this committee here that you've got the right checks and balances in place when you're actually doing that sort of amount of money. Because jumping from the figure it was to £1 million, like Councillor Woodliff said, does raise concern, and obviously people are worried about that sort of large amount of expenditure. It isn't probably large in the terms of what the council are doing anyway, but for people around this table, £1 million is a lot of money. And I'd like you just to give us some assurance that there's lots of tight, manageable checks and balances in place with amounts of money like that on contracts or on purchases that we're going to be satisfied that there's going to be no errors or any problems. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So yeah, on the basis of contract management, it's been a focus for the team to improve and make more efficient and effective across the 3 councils. So 2 things we're doing. One is we're just about to implement a contract management standards document to introduce some consistent approach across all council officers for contract management, and that includes tiering. So we'll tier it on the basis of value, but not just value solely, so risk and the kind of the dangers and impact of should that contractor kind of fail, basically. So how hard that is. So we've got that being implemented and training going across the board. So that will cover off kind of more effective contract management. And on the basis that also we've got a contract management network that's now being set up, that's allowing all the 3 councils and officers at the 3 councils to share best knowledge, share practice across the board. So with us as the procurement and contracts team chairing that to make sure that we again are providing that knowledge base to all of useful tips, useful hints, because effectively that operational contract manager needs to follow process in due course, and we've got that from start to finish.
So let me just ask another question, then I'll let Councillor Woodliff come in. If you've got a large contract to the value of, let's say, £1 million or thereabouts, how many times are you having monitoring sessions and meetings with the people that are operating that contract to make sure that we're not falling foul, we don't fall off the railway track? Just give me some examples of how many meetings and controls and that you're doing in checks and balances along the way of that contract. Just give me a rough idea.
Yeah, so for us, those million plus ones, we're speaking with the day-to-day operational contract manager on a bi-monthly basis to make sure that things are working, things are being done, and as part of that contract management standards, which is going to be implemented, their role is being successfully considered. In addition to that, we also attend and chair the contract review meetings, so it gives the officer focus on their operational side of things, but it also lets us to look at what issues are happening, what actions are happening, and gives us that real awareness and real life, real-time picture to the contract.
And if anything starts to wobble on that contract, what is put in place immediately to stop that falling off the tracks altogether? Give us some examples of what you would do.
Yeah, so my team are on hand to support reactively and actively on that basis. So we'd do, well, some examples are we'd bring the supplier in for a meeting and we'd be heavily involved and actively involved that to kind of resolve all of those issues if there were major issues. And the alternative, so if we're still not getting to those issues, then obviously we've got that contractual knowledge, so we'll see if there's any termination rights, what different rights we've got, what our plan B might be. So we're trying to build a picture of the contract so we can see how and where things might go, so we're not being left behind, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Woodliff, you're going to ask another question.
Okay. I want to just come back on that if I can, and just say that I have no criticism for our staff. They're excellent, and that's the staff as well of PPS, PSPS. I have no criticisms of any of the staff. The only thing is, it's go from 85,000 to £1 million. It's quite a leap, and I think that a written report is always a good thing. People can continue to monitor and things and so on. But a written report sets something in stone, if you like. I don't always work with it. It sets a line so that people at a later stage can come back and say, yes, well, at this point it was going well, but at that point it's not, and you've got it in writing. Whereas if it's all verbal, then you can't pin things down in the same way. So I mean, when I saw this 85 to £1 million, I thought, well, that is a huge leap. Now I don't know whether the 85,000 was set. Maybe that's set 25 or 30 years ago. Maybe that's what it is. But from 85,000 to £1 million is a huge leap, and that's the point I'm making here. There's no criticism of staff. I'm sure we have the very best staff. We wouldn't have it. Our staff are the best in the country. But, from our perspective, you need to ask the question, why this gap?
Okay, Martin, you want to come back on that one?
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point from Councillor Woodliff. So what I'll do is, if you're happy, I can provide a response on a linkage with the contract management standards that we're going to do, because I'm quite comfortable with the £85,000. I think what will happen and what we hopefully will assure is the contract management standards document that's due to be implemented as of next month will then have what we call platinum and gold tier contracts in particular, which are less than £1 million. But they provide lots of detail on kind of self-assurance reviews, but there's also other monitoring elements that are going through that. So I'd like to kind of share that detail with the committee kind of post-meeting, if that's okay, so you can see a detail of what that standards is going to include and the roles and responsibilities for contract managers.
Yeah, that's fine. Let me just go back to the meetings that you have with the contract companies. From my personal use as a former CEO, when we had contracts and things, everything that we did at the meetings that Councillor Woodliff was talking about, everything we did was documented, and everything was in black and white, and everything was recorded, so that there was any issues, it was noted and acted upon there and then or immediately. Are all your meetings recorded and documented with your contract people?
So not all the ones that we own. So the ones we're involved in. So there's high level, because we don't obviously we're not involved in contract management for every single contract, because there's some for £20,000, £30,000, so they're dealt with operationally. But yeah, the ones we're involved in and we chair the meetings, they'll be recorded. There's a clear action issues log and a change control log, and we've got all the documents and templates in place, which also I'm happy to share.
I think it's important that meetings are documented, whether it's 10 grand, 50 grand or 100 grand. I think basically you need something to fall back onto from what you've had a meeting, and you can pinpoint the issues and problems to the people that you're working with. That's just my personal view. I've always documented everything I've done in life for all meetings, whether it's a meeting of contracts or a meeting of something important. But anyway, thank you very much for that. There's a question from Councillor Danny. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, looking at the recommendations on page 262, and we say other options considered, which is we need an update because we haven't done anything for the last 3 years. So when you look at page 267 and you look at basic principles, and I'm looking just at the basic principles from the delivery, from the consideration of high standard and integrity, operate in transparent manner. My question to Martin, is these values that we have here in front of us weren't applied before these 3 years and we need to update them, so we didn't have any transparency, we didn't have any integrity, or our contract behavior was less or short of these things? If you can just explain to me, because it seems that something was not right then.
Thanks, Councillor Danny. So I think I'm understanding the question correctly. Apologies if not, and if not, can you please repeat? But on the basis of what you said, so those principles were already in the contract procedurals previously. There's been slight amendments to the wording, but in whole, they're relatively the same as the previous iteration.
Thank you, Martin. I think that's quite acceptable. Are you okay with that? Good.
Words it comes in that saying that probably we didn't practice them in the past. However, now it's updated and things are more.
They were in there already, but what they keep doing is that they keep updating things and making them tighter and tighter and tighter. I can get that feeling from the conversation we're having. Councillor Noble, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I have about 4 questions. The first one is about framework agreements. Now, framework agreements have a bit of a checkered history. I'll give you an example. We had a framework agreement, this is back in 2016, I think it was with the Robert Woodhead Group, and it was for provision of biomass boilers at the PRSA and the Jeff Molesey Leisure Complex. Now, that was originally scheduled to be a £500,000 contract, and then it went up to 700,000 plus, and the boilers broke down within 2 years. So what's the rationale for using framework agreements? Why do we use them? That's my first question, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Noble. Yeah, so frameworks, project by project basis. So our team give an options analysis on each project we deal with, and often I've got a similar view to a lot of, to what might be yours from what you've said about the example you provided, that I do think frameworks can sometimes be a simple, easy way out, and sometimes something that is not the best option but has probably been utilised in the past. What we do now is we give a full and frank options appraisal for each project. And yeah, we still use frameworks like by the likes of ESPO and CCS where appropriate. But what we are doing is we're providing options and saying, actually, this one we think an open tender is best. We think a quotation process between local suppliers is most appropriate, that kind of thing. So there is still a place for frameworks. We do still utilise where possible, where required, but I would say probably much more sparingly than was done previously.
And my second question is about Appendix 2, which is obviously is on pages 315 to 318, amended delegation to officers. It seemed to me that this allows massive scope for officers to avoid reference to the procurement and contract service when dealing with certain contracts. Can I give you an example? when I came back on the council, I think it's full council in May, and we had the freighters contract. Okay, now that was something that should have gone to C&C as a financial matter for scrutiny. It didn't go. We were told, given the constraints of time, it had to be pushed through. So I'm very worried that there's too much scope in these arrangements under Appendix 2 for officers to use the excuse, oh, well, it's all come to us very, very late and we've got to rush it through. So I'm not very happy about that. The other thing is, this is on page 317. Why are contracts not under seal allowed?
Thank you, Councillor Noble. So on the delegations, your general point to start off with, just to be clear that this document's not being changed from the current iteration. So I'd lean on the monitoring officer for any advice on that one if possible. On regards to page 317, so the reason we sign contracts underhand sometimes instead of under seal is just based on risk profile, really. So signing under seal can be a comprehensive ask, and it gives you double the time of liability, but some contracts we don't feel the need to seal the contract, and that'd be the same across other public sector organisations too. So some will sign underhand and you'll still get your 6 years of liability, whereas sign under seal gives you the 12.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'm going back to the revised contract procedure, Appendix 3. I was a bit concerned about the 40 to 85,000 variation, and originally you needed seeking 5 written quotes, and now it's been knocked down to 2, and the excuses allows more flexibility. Surely just saves a bit of time for officers. And the point is that you may ask for 3 written quotes, doesn't mean necessarily you're going to get 3 written quotes. So I'm not very happy about that. Don't know if you want to comment on that.
Thanks, Phil. I feel I've covered that off within the brief. So the reason behind from moving from 5 to 3 is on the basis of we've kind of engaged with local suppliers. We're finding times and other times it's tricky to find 5 quotes in the first place in some instances, so we're having to take exemptions or do other options because we can't find those 5 quotes in the first place. What I would say is that isn't at least, so if there is an option, like I said, at that value, my team are involved from the start. So if there's an option that we think, even an open tender, or there's 6 different suppliers in the industry, or there's 7 local suppliers who we think would really be beneficial to invite to quote, then that is still an option that we'd put on the options appraisal to recommend to the relevant council officer.
Any other question, Councillor Noble?
Thank you. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Cantwell.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 questions from me. Thinking from a parish councillor perspective, the requirement for 1 written quote and 2 written quotes in the first 2 categories of procurement values, would it not be best practice to have that as always 3 written quotes? And secondly, does the council operate a approved contractor list?
Sorry, Councillor Campbell, are you suggesting 0 to £5,000 should be 3 written quotes?
I was just querying if I think from a parish council perspective, the best practice for all tenders is 3 written quotes. I was just wondering why we haven't gone with that. I know it's a different set of rules and regs, but is there a reason why you feel in this instance 1 and 2 written quotes is okay, but as soon as it gets to above £12,500, 3 written quotes is a requirement?
Okay, sorry, thanks. Yeah, so we've undertaken benchmarking across the kind of public sector as in other local authorities and the wider public sector to see kind of if we're in a suitable place. Obviously, it was a 0 to £5,000 already at 1 written quote. And yeah, so it's a resource thing, a budgetary thing. So it's a trust with council officers that there is a time and a place if there's something that they need to purchase and it's £3,000, let's say. Sometimes the time to find 3 quotes, seek 3 quotes, etc., outweighs the cost of actually getting 3 other quotes, if that makes sense. And what was your other question? Apologies.
It was whether the council operate a approved contractor list for tenders.
So there's no official approved contractor list. It's almost not best practice anymore. So because it can be seen as being obstructive for new suppliers to get onto an approved supplier list. What we do have is, so we've got a database of suppliers. It's called Intend, our e-tendering portal. And so when we've got a requirement, there's something called a CPV, a Common Procurement Vocabulary Code. And so these suppliers register and utilise Common Procurement Vocabulary. So different areas of work, services, suppliers that they provide, and we'll attribute that to a project, and they'll then automatically be notified of an open tender or project should that be come arise. So we know we haven't got an approved list, but if people register onto our portal, they do get access to look at opportunities.
I do have a concern about the 1 and 2 written quotes for the lower amounts. I appreciate that the procurement process for higher amounts is a very competitive one, but I worry about the uncompetitiveness of the lower amounts, and those do cost up, quite significantly in the end. Is there any assurance you can provide that the procurement process for them are competitive and this council is getting the best value for money instead of officers taking the easy route and approaching no one they can get a quick response from?
Yeah, so I'd say sometimes a quick response is what a council officer requires as per an urgent need potentially. So that is something, but yeah, value for money comes in all shapes and sizes. So the main fail-safe is the budget. So if someone has got a budget for £3,000 and they get a quotation for £3,700, then they'll automatically, even though it says one written quotation, they'll go and bind a second quotation, a third quotation, to try and see if they're within that budget. So yeah, we as from a procurement team don't get involved at those lower value elements, but we do undertake what's called spend analysis and tail spend analysis. So we analyse spend on a quarterly basis, which the team review in detail and provide a report back to SLT to kind of provide details on non-compliant spend and cumulative spend, where we can where there's aggregate spend that we could look to get a contract in place for. And on an annual basis, there's tail spend analysis that's taken that specifically looks into that £0 to £5,000 detail, the low value quotes. So that spend, that's where we're looking to see, are people utilising the same supplier, as you've alluded to, kind of for ease, but there's actually other options potentially there. So I think from a procurement perspective, we cover it off proportionally at the 0 to 5, but then on a quarterly basis, 5,000 above, we are constantly looking to see, have people got 2 quotations? Where they haven't got 2 quotations, why is that? Because then it's not compliant, and anything non-compliant is then fed through to SLT in a quarterly report.
Thank you, Martin. I'm going to move on to the last question now. No, one more question, because we've had half an hour on this, and I think we've had long enough. Councillor Izard.
Thank you, Chair. Funny enough, James has already touched on one of the questions I was going to give, but how do we get local tradesmen to enter onto this portal that you're discussing? How do they do that? Because there's sometimes frustration from local tradesmen regarding that. And secondly, does this document also revise the way you write contracts? So if we go back to the park gates, where you formed a contract to close the park gates, paid them up in advance, and then they failed to carry out the necessary work, has that been also part of this programme?
Thank you, Councillor Izard. So on the local contractors and how they can access our portal, so we're continuously engaged with local suppliers across all 3 councils, just to try and make
We've lost you, Martin.
And sorry, can access the portal. Have you got me back? Apologies.
You're back now, yes. Go on, carry on. Martin, I'm going to say that we'll leave that question for
So,
response on a written answer. Martin, I'm just going to say leave the question and give us a written answer on that question if you don't mind. I think you're breaking up and we need to move on. Can I just say to everybody here and to you, Martin, if you can hear me, thank you very much for your very comprehensive report. It was very interesting to see all the amendments that you logged and showed us on each of those pages there. So I'm quite confident that your report was very well received, very well documented. I've got a lot of faith in the purchasing of departments here, so I haven't got a problem with that. Can I ask the rest of the committee here to say that, are you happy to note and comment? We've commented on that. Are you happy with the notes and the report we've got? And the comments have been recorded by officers, so that the Governance Audit Committee notes the draft revised contract procedure at Appendix 1A to this report. Everybody happy? Right, we're going to move on. Martin, I'll let you go. Thank you very much for your time. And sorry that you broke up, and we'll have to move on. Thank you.
Apologies. Bye-bye.
It's gone. Right, we'll move on then now to the next item, which is item. As I get my bits of paper lined up. Yeah, item 1. This is the External Audit Completion Report 24-25, pages 13 to 66. And we've got the KPM Director, James Bourne, in attendance this evening. And you've also got somebody else with you, James, have you, as well? You'd like to introduce them?
Yeah, so this is Dan. He's the assistant manager on the job and actually responsible for doing quite a lot of the actual day-to-day work. So he can take a lot of the credit for the status of completion to date.
The legwork, as I call it.
Over to you then, guys. Come on.
Okay.
All yours.
So thanks, Chair. So before I'll let Dan talk you through some of the key highlights from the report, I'll give a bit of an overview of our status. So as you can see from page 4 of our report, our audit is substantially complete, and we'll be in a position to sign our audit opinion ahead of the backstop date and sooner if possible and required, which is obviously a really positive position to be in at this stage and compares really favourably to the picture nationally, where I know a lot of audits are still only partially through the process. So at this stage, I just want to give thanks to PSPS for all the effort in what has been a very rigorous and, I suppose, audit that has been full of challenge and professional skepticism. So in terms of the opinion itself that we intend to sign, in line with prior year, this will be an unqualified, unmodified audit opinion, which is obviously a really positive outcome and is underpinned by the assurance provided in the reports, which I'll let Dan talk you through now.
Thank you, James, and hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So firstly, just a reminder of the significant risks that we communicated to you guys as part of the audit plan presented to you in April. These being the valuation of land and buildings, specifically the location factor, the BCAS, and the obsolescence factor, the management overrider controls, and the valuation of post-retirement benefit obligations. On page 19 of your agenda pack, you can see that we've reduced the location factor and obsolescence assumptions from significant to elevated. In terms of the significant risk findings then, on page 22, we've summarized the valuation of land and buildings. You can see on that page that we've identified a neutral response in terms of both the significant assumption itself and the valuation of land and buildings. We identified a small understatement of 284,000 in the context of the PP assets in relation to the BCAS assumption. And then a couple of things on the top right of your page, we identified 2 material misstatements, one for 1.5 million in relation to the land value per acre assumption, and one for 1.25 million in relation to the PRSA. These have both been corrected by management and therefore no issues noted there. In terms of the management overrider controls, we didn't identify any fraudulent journals. You can see our findings on page 24 of the agenda pack. And then similarly for the post-retirement benefit obligations, no issues noted there either, and therefore conclusion of neutral. On page 43 and 44 of the audit of the agenda pack, we've summarised the corrected and uncorrected misstatements. In terms of the uncorrected misstatements, we've identified 2 in PPE and 1 in relation to income. However, we are satisfied that even though they do remain uncorrected as of the final financial statements, that they don't pose a material risk to the financial statements. I'll leave the corrected misstatements as read, as we've covered the main 2, and obviously they're corrected, so no issues there. In terms of recommendations this year then, on page 46 to 49, we've raised 4 recommendations. None of these are significant or fundamental to the system of internal control at the council. They're mainly just performance improvement observations. In terms of the prior year, we followed up on 10 recommendations in the prior year. 6 have been implemented, 2 have been partially implemented, and 2 have not been implemented. That's a very high-level summary of the ISO 260. I suppose I'll pass back to James.
Yeah.
Take questions.
Yeah, happy to take questions.
Thank you. And we'll throw the floor open for questions. Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm looking through the report. It would have been helpful, actually. There'd been a glossary of terms and terminology, because we're not all sort of familiar with things. So I noticed that in the Boston Borough Council report further on, there is a glossary all the way through it, but in this one there isn't. So I had to look up what a DRC was, depreciated replacement cost, to find out what BCIS meant, Building Cost Information Service. I think we know what CIPFA is, Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accounting, but the RAG rate I hadn't come across, but now I discovered that's red, amber and green performance. So when I read the report, I need to see those things to understand them. I'm not an expert in this area at all. You know, and the other thing is that it's quite true, but I'm a teacher by profession. I look for spellings all the time. I notice that people don't know what an apostrophe is or how to use one. Well, I do. So I think perhaps you might get someone in your company just to check through your reports to make sure that everybody understands how to use an apostrophe. I'll sell my services, if you like, to you, £250,000. But I mean, I think it's important. If you're going to pay a lot of money for a report, it has to be correct. Everything has to be correct. They're the comments I make, first of all. I might want to come back a bit later on, but they're the ones I want to make right at the start. Thank you, Chairman.
Can you explain why there's no glossary terms of that's normally in the pack, just for Councillor Woodliff's benefit?
I think it's a very, very fair challenge. It's not one that we've received to date, but it's definitely one we'll take away and include in future reports, because I can appreciate that actually there's quite a lot of technical accountant speak in there that might not be day-to-day parlance for everyone that isn't involved in the audit process. So that is really helpful. And in terms of the apostrophes, to be honest, it's a bit of a bugbear of mine, so I'm quite embarrassed that I didn't pick them all up. So I'll go through it again with a fine-tooth comb, and when we provide the final version of this, hopefully you'll be able to come back and tell me that I've done a good job and I've got them all in the right place.
I think you ought to employ a proofreader. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Thank you. Any other questions? Adam.
Thank you, Chair. I'm terrible at proofreading, but James, I think you might be familiar with some of these questions from elsewhere. So page 36, I just wanted to clarify what are the first and second line controls that you referred to there. And just for officers on the same page, the potential savings that those are reported to. I just wanted to understand which committee that was. So I'll just come back on a couple of other questions after that, if I may. Oh, sorry.
So in terms of your first question, that is obviously management's response that they have provided. So the 3 lines of control is a concept that's used mainly in internal audit, which represents management as being the first line of control, the second line of control being policies, procedures and systems, and the third line of control being external assurance simply provided by people like KPMG, outside experts and specialists.
And then just officers on the committee that potential savings are reported to.
Anybody going to answer the question on that one?
Yeah, the paper refers to potential savings being reported up to what I assume is a council committee, but I just wanted to understand which committee that is. It's not this one, obviously, but it is presumably another one.
Russell, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, we've got a red light. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is something that we factored into the standard sort of budget monitoring process. So we've got an internal process for staff already. That's been in place. I think there's a transformation board tomorrow where we'll consider those items. But when you come to see the routine quarterly reporting, you will see included in that figure, in those that set of figures, there are lines around the efficiency requirements as well. So it's now, if not previously, factored into those reports and should be monitored on a quarterly basis as a minimum.
Thank you, Chair. On page 39, the audit fee, and I appreciate this has been mentioned already, but that is 22,000 higher than last year. Now, I appreciate there have been some significant difficulties that KPMG identified during the year, and you've outlined those on page 29. But I just wanted to understand why the 22,000 difference.
So as it was previously picked up in the briefing before this meeting started, the fee for the external audit is actually set by the PSAA, and we're not involved in the setting of that fee. The point to note that within 23-24, included in the scale, not included in the scale fee, was the audit fee for the implementation of a new audit and standard ISA 315 revise, which related to ongoing risk assessment, and therefore that fee had to be accounted for via a fee variation, which part of that you can see on the second line of the table. The fee for 24-25 now includes that as standard within the scale fee, and also includes an inflationary uplift on the 23-24 fee. So that scale fee is the baseline fee that's been set by PSAA in the current year.
Thank you, James. Page 49. So the buildings valuation points, we have a management response that says the recommendation hasn't been accepted. Now, normally when that happens, we get an explanation. I just wanted to plug up that we would expect to see the reason for that in this report. I think we probably would want to know why management haven't accepted it as well, but just purely on governance, I think we do need to know the reason.
Okay, can I ask one of the officers to give us a comment on that? Are you possible, or?
On some of these recommendations around the property, plant and equipment, we are actually still working through how we can implement those recommendations. We've got a meeting in early December to discuss that. So when the final report comes to this committee, we can include how we are going to implement that and provide a bit more explanation around that.
Really helpful, thank you, Ali. And just two final points. And these are both on the previous year's audit, page 51 on bank reconciliations. Now, I think this has come up before and we've discussed it before, but this is about the 5 bank reconciliations that are being carried out. I thought there were plans to streamline that. I may be wrong, but I just wonder if we could have an explanation of why we're still at that point. And just on the final point as well, if I can take that as well at the same time, the year-end accrual process on page 54, I just wanted to clarify that the reason that accruals may get missed, as the narrative said, is that there's so many of them. So if officers could just address those 2 points, and then that's me finished. Thank you.
Thank you. So on the page 51 regarding the bank recs, just to provide assurance to the committee that since September 24, they have been undertaken, fully completed and reviewed within 10 working days of the month end each month. A significant improvement on the previous year. There are still some limitations around how far we can streamline the bank reconciliation process on the basis we do have those 5 bank accounts, and obviously it would be quite a big job to close any of those with you know the nature of the transactions, the volume of the transactions that we have going through those. Regarding the accruals process on page 54, absolutely right. There are hundreds of accruals posted each year end, identified by budget managers, reviewed by business partners, and by the very nature of that, some can get missed, and KPMG have identified one or two of those.
Really helpful. Thank you, Annie.
Okay, Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Chair. Can gentlemen just confirm that you're wholly satisfied, if not pleased, with the information and cooperation you received from PS Limited in terms of compiling your
Yeah,
report?
absolutely. I think since we came in as external auditors last year, there's been a real, I suppose, culture of continuous improvement in terms of learning from prior year audit, and the improvement year on year has really been significant in terms of the speed and the quality of information that we've been able to get back this year. And obviously we have 3 audits going on side by side within the partnership. It is a massive ask, and our requirements are quite detailed and extensive. So we do understand there's a lot of pressure on management to get us to those, but I think given where we are in the year, not being before the end of November and already being in a position to sign the financial statements is really indicative of a strong process that's in place now.
I can actually say, from my point of view as the chairman of this committee, that I've seen a lot of improvements and changes from PSPS, and they are getting, you know, really up to date with everything now, and I'm very pleased the way things are going. And you know, they have had issues, but like everybody, they've put the heart and soul into getting those issues up to date and sorted. Our accountants have, you know, sort of agreed with me on that, and I'm sure this committee here has seen a lot of changes and improvements since we've had all those issues in the past. I'm happy that, you know, things are going in the right direction, so I'll move on. Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose what you want to pick up is on page 35. I think my colleagues have already probably partially picked up this anyway, but I note that on page 35 it talks about information not being available. It says at the bottom for whether it says requested evidence of this meeting, however, no minutes or action logs have been kept by the council. That's on the first bullet point, and the second one is similar, isn't it? Therefore, in the absence of audit events, we cannot confirm the efficiency lists are discussed appropriately within the governance structure of the council. So it appears that meetings are occurring, but there are no minutes or action logs, or should we say agendas, or lists of people who are present. And I think that's you know, as a council, we expect every minute, every meeting to be minuted correctly. So there's a, you know, there's a trail of information going through, and I think that's a serious matter. And I can think back actually, of course, probably people weren't here, but when the alliance was considered around 2021, there's a big issue. I remember senior council saying we've had 10 meetings with the members of East Leeds District Council, and I said, well, let's have the minutes, please, and the agendas, and they couldn't provide those. Couldn't even tell me who was present. So I think that that there's an issue inside the council that they're not being careful enough about what they're doing. So I wonder whether the officers can assure us that going forward, all the meetings will be minuted, yeah, and all the action logs will be kept by the council, so that as we go forward from here, we'll know exactly what's being done behind the scenes, if I put it that way. Perhaps the officers can help us in that. Thank you, Chairman.
Does anyone want to comment on Councillor Woodliff's question? Let me just say this to all of you, that, you know, documentation is important. If anything goes wrong, you have got a trailblaze of stuff you can fall back onto. And again, from a professional point of view, from my time as CEO in different companies, you know, we documented everything because there's always a need for that if any issues arise later down the line. I'll shut up now. I'll let John Medler speak.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to briefly come back on that point. There is a agenda and minutes for the transformation board that's taking place, looking at those savings going forward. So I can tell you that is now in place for that meeting, which the auditors have previously commented on. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, we'll go on to Councillor Cantwell.
Thank you, Chair. A question and a comment from me. I remember probably a couple of years ago now, I asked about these efficiency board meetings and whether there was minutes, and I was fobbed off by the then Section 151 officer. So that's not something I want to see happen again. And I want to, you know, there needs to be clear governance of these meetings going forward. My question to officers is mainly on page 15 of the report, which is the significant difficulties regarding the valuation of land and buildings. Now, this is something I've seen pop up in a previous audit, and it's come up again now, and I think it would be worth, and I would propose having some sort of briefing or the internal valuer coming along to explain a bit more about what they do and why these issues have appeared. Because it's not a member of staff I've met, and I think it would be very interesting for members to kind of scrutinise these difficulties.
Anyone like to comment on that? From my point of view, I'll just give you my point of view as a chairman of this committee, that if you get 3 or 4 different valuers to value land, you'll come up with 4 different prices and different figures. So that could be an issue in itself, but I can't say any more on that because I don't do land valuing, but I can imagine by getting 4 valuers in, you're going to get 4 different sets of figures. So that's probably one of the reasons why. Does the auditor want to comment on that? Can I ask you to comment on his question?
Yeah, and I would say internally at KPMG in the past week, we have had a briefing from our own internal valuation specialists who have indicated that nationally we've seen quite a lot of difficulties within the valuation of land and buildings within the local government sector space. And that's not only with regards to organisations who have their own internal valuers, but actually national organisations as well. It is something that those findings are something that I'll share with management to aid the debrief that we'll have around this. It is worth saying that your internal valuer is responsible for carrying out the valuations across the 3 councils in the partnership. The level of work and documentation required to maintain the relevant data, have the audit trail for the relevant assumptions and everything that's required to meet our and the international standards of auditing is quite extensive. And I suppose getting up to meet that bar is quite a lot of work. So I do appreciate the fact that it may not be perfect, and there is a lot of challenge and professional skepticism that goes into our work. And we do have healthy debate, shall we say, with the internal valuer, who is very happy to stand their ground and stand behind their assumptions and levels of estimation, which we're happy with because we are satisfied that they're independent, qualified and objective. Our main point that we continue to raise within this audit and the other audits within the partnership is just around that audit trail and making sure that where they are making judgments and assumptions included within this report, that there is simply a paper to justify why that is, because a lot of the time that will satisfy ourselves, but at the minute just some of that golden thread doesn't exist.
Just to ask, who does the internal valuer respond? Who do they report to? Who's under who looks after their operation? Or do they report to the Section 151 officer or to the CEO? Or does anybody know? John, do you know? The assets, you think? Yes. Richard.
By Richard, do you mean Russell? Yeah, no, it's absolutely fine, Chairman. I was just looking around though and checking there wasn't somebody else who was going to answer the question. Yes, it's the group manager assets. I think ultimately reports through to Andy Fisher. But I would just say, Chairman, if I can, myself and Ellie might be involved or might not know she's involved yet. But I am looking at organising a meeting with Duncan and Andy and Ellie to sort of work through and to ensure we've got clarity around what we're all expecting for next year. Because I think picking up the point from earlier, whilst in the recommendation or one of the responses to the management action, it says we've not accepted it. It's not that we haven't accepted it, we just haven't accepted it yet. So we need to just work that through and come to a reasonable solution that, as has been said, it's professional judgment, but we need to evidence that professional judgment in a way which is proportionate to the issues we're considering. So it's just making sure we bring all those issues together to get to the right answer.
Thank you, Russell. Got it right. Councillor Danny.
Sir Chairman, I think my question has been already probably by James and Councillor Cantwell, Councillor Stephen Woodliff. And that's sometimes where I start thinking about the transparency and integrity. We don't know much. And from property wise and our assets, if the value is not there, which it will affect our reputation financially, because if we want to borrow money, it's always going according to your, your assets. And I wonder if we did have any issues before regarding this sort of devaluation of our, properties or assets in general, because I can see from page 52, there's like almost $250,000, which is a devaluation. I think we're not significant. Yeah. We also identified, that the Princess Arena Sports Arena, a floor plan, it didn't, and it was devalued by 248K. Then there were, this is the things which is making me think if we have few things like that, that will accumulate to millions, which could be in our benefit if we want to go forward with like restoring the place or doing something. You need to borrow money on the top. So if your assets, it's valued at that time, you will get the money. But if it's less valued, then it will affect your borrowing. So like I say, I will insist, I think, transparency. We need to know these things and we need to know our values. I said it before, I asked if we can get what's our assets are valued. And I think the valuation of assets should be done every year or every 6 months, so we know where we stand. Thank you.
That was a long-winded question, but anyway, do you get the gist of all that? Don't worry. We just want an answer now. Can anybody give us an answer on that one? James.
Yeah, so I suppose for assurance purposes, the council does revalue its assets every year as part of the audit. In fact, it's not actually required that they are revalued every year. They're supposed to be revalued at least once within every 5 years. So it is actually good practice that they are done on a yearly basis. I think, Chair, you made a good point that if you got 10 different valuers and devalue the asset base, there would probably be 10 different values, and us ourselves are coming up with a different value as well. So it's, but the most important thing from our point of view is that the value within the account is materially correct. Our materiality is 1.2 million. So that sort of gives you an idea that we're happy that everything's correct within that value, and considering the size of the asset base, I think you can take reasonable assurance that actually the systems and processes and the valuation exercise that's being completed is sufficient and appropriate for the purposes of the financial statements.
Thank you. Can I come back, Mr. Chairman?
Very quickly, I'm going to move on. Go on, you can come back.
You say every 5 years we have the right to do it within 5 years. Yeah. So in that 5 years, it can go up, it can go down. So do we check it sometimes just to see where we stand?
So because the council does it every year, you will see fluctuations every year. There'll be certain councils that may only do it once every 5 years and just do a simple indexation in the years that change. It is worth noting that the accounting standards with regard to this are going to change in the near future, that will see the valuation of land and buildings be simplified to a greater extent. And at that stage, in terms of a market value of those assets, you may wish to seek assurance from different parties. But at this stage, we're happy that on a yearly basis, those assets are considered in a robust way.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. I think we've taken enough questions on that one now. So thank you for the comprehensive report. There's no red flags in there anyway, so we're quite happy. You're quite happy. PSPS are quite happy. And it sounds like you're all working very well together, which is great to hear. So can I ask the committee just to note the comments? Everybody's happy that the comments have been recorded by our officers. Can we move on? Lovely, thank you. We're going to part 2 then now on the External Auditor's Annual Report. That's on page 67. James, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. So this document provides a summary of findings and key issues arising from our 24-25 audit of the council, with the key focus being on our value for money commentary. This report is being prepared in line with the requirements set out in the Code of Audit Practice published by the National Audit Office and is required to be published by the Council alongside its signed annual report and accounts ahead of the backstop date in February. And as you can see from this document, specifically on page 7 of our report, as a result of our work, we've not identified any significant risks or weaknesses in the Council's value for money arrangements across the 3 required criteria of financial sustainability, governance, and improving economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. As you can see, the purpose of this report, because it's published on the website, is to try to cut through some of that complexity that you would have seen in the prior report, and it's supposed to be a bit less impenetrable for users of the general public. So hopefully it provides a fair and balanced reflection of your understanding of the organisation's arrangements. We have shared it with management who have confirmed factual accuracy, but at that stage, I'm happy to take any questions on the detail itself.
Thank you. Very comprehensive. Any questions from the committee? No? Oh, I've got a question. Councillor Woodliff, the apostrophe man. Come on then, over to you.
Right, I was going to say, I was picking up financial sustainability. I was looking at page 77, and I'm looking at the internal drainage board levy continues to be a cost pressure for the council. And we know primarily the reason for that was the Ukraine war and the cost of fuel. But of course, the cost of fuel has now tumbled. And I was wondering whether or not the officers consider the possibility that the drainage boards might be thinking about cutting back their demand on this council, seeing as a significant increase in costs was pushed by the the rise in the cost of fuel. I read in the paper that the cost of fuel is crashing below the floor. So is it possible, do you think, that the drainage boards might be thinking about giving some of their money back? Sorry.
Would anyone like to answer that question from Councillor Woodliff about negotiating with the boards? Russell.
Thank you, Chairman. I think there's probably a short answer and a slightly longer answer. So I think the short version is no. I think the slightly longer version is obviously we're working very closely with the local drainage board to try and find some reasonable solutions to the position we find ourselves in. I think in fairness to them, whilst fuel costs are falling, their cost of operation are not. So electricity costs remain high, and the system that's in place essentially penalises the sort of usage they have as well. So it's not an ideal solution for them, and it's far from ideal for us. But we will continue to work collectively and with government to try and get a better answer financially.
You can come back, Councillor Woodliff. Yeah.
Do you think there's any possibility that the government will continue shelling out a bit of cash for us? They gave us, I think, was it £400,000 a year or something, I think, towards the cost of the ID. So I think £3 million shared across the 14 IDBs, I think. Is it likely that it's going to be an annual, dishing out of cash for people with IDBs, or do you think that was a one-off?
Yes, again, through you, Chairman. Yeah, both. I think indications at this point, and we do need to wait for the probably the autumn budget, the provisional settlement, and potentially a policy statement in between as well. Indications at this point are that the one-off annual grant is likely to continue for the coming year, but at this point we don't have certainty of that. And what we don't have, which is probably more important, is a long-term embedded solution. This is still sort of annual ad hoc rather than something that we can rely on properly going forward.
I think Russell's answered the question for you there, so I think we'll move on. Councillor Cantwell.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, and I don't need the answer now, on page 13 of the report, I was hoping I could just get a bit of commentary about why our year-end cash position compared to last year to this year is so dramatically different. I say I don't need an answer now, but if that could be on the action list, that would be great.
Is that okay for someone to provide that as an action point for the next meeting? Thank you. Noted. Any other questions? We've got no more questions at the moment. I think we seem to be quite happy with that. Anybody happy? So we'll just go and take that as noted. Everybody happy for us to move on? So thank you. So James, thank you very much. I'm sorry I forgot your name again. I'm terrible for names. I won't call you Russell. Don't worry. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, James. Well done. And very comprehensive report. And thank you very much for answering all the questions. Right, we're going to item 3, financial statements. This is on page 91 of the agenda pack. And I'm going to ask Ellie to present that report to us. Thank you, Ellie. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to present and seek approval of the audited financial statements for 24-25 for publication. So further to the audit findings that you've heard from KPMG as part of their reports, the committee received the draft financial statements on the 7th of July 2025, and at that meeting I explained the key elements of the key events during the year and any year-on-year changes. I therefore only propose to explain any key changes as a result of the audit process from the version that the committee saw back in July. So as KPMG have already discussed, there were 2 adjustments that required ledger postings where there were errors in the valuations of 2 assets on the balance sheet, and that resulted in a £2.374 million overstatement that has now been corrected. Page 45 of the agenda pack within KPMG's report also discussed the corrected disclosures that have been undertaken. So there were corrections to the related parties note 33, where we provided enhanced disclosures regarding transactions that were identified with the relevant related parties. And also on note 30, officers' remuneration, a correction was made to the disclosure there as well. There were the checks and balances process is still ongoing with KPMG. So obviously I had to publish the financial statements as they stood ready for publishing with this agenda pack, but we are still working with KPMG just to undertake those final checks and balances and make any changes as necessary prior to the final sign-off of the accounts. Therefore, as part of the recommendation, we have asked that the committee authorise the Section 151 officer in conjunction with the chairman of this committee to approve any further amendments if required to the version that we have presented here today. The financial statements also contain the annual governance statement, which was approved by this committee back in July. Therefore, no further approvals are required as part of this report. There are some improvements that you heard from KPMG as part of their report, so I'm already working on those with the relevant officers to ensure that those improvements are implemented where relevant, to ensure that they do not reoccur in the 25-26 audit process. I didn't propose to go through the appendix in any further detail, but I am happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ellie. Are any questions from the committee? Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have several. Starting off on page 92, we had these 2 audit differences and they referred to 2 assets, but it doesn't say what they were. So this is bullet point 22. First one is there was a reduction of 1.249 million in that asset, and then the same on the second one below it. A second asset valuation, which had to be corrected. Can you say what those were or not?
Yes, I can. So on page 44 of the agenda pack, KPMG have detailed those assets. So the £1.485 million was relating to the playing field at Garfitts Lane. The playing field at Garfitts Lane. And the second one was the athletics track at PRSA.
We'll put your mic.
Sorry.
Big one, Chair. 105, I think. Yes, I did ask this earlier. The question about no homes bonus was answered. We don't know yet. This is on the pie chart at the bottom. So what's the proportion of money spent on staff salary and wages costs excluding pensions? If we know that one, and also allied to that, what's the percentage of the council expenditure on pension provision?
We'll take those away and provide a response after, if that's okay. Thank you.
Any other question, Councillor Noble?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. 107. Yes, the Boston Partnership funding, it was a newish grant that we received in the last 2 years. What is the total sum of that government grant? Because I see looking down there, obviously, it's been accessed for various projects on 107. So what is the total sum of that?
I'll take that one away as well,
Thank
if that's
you.
okay. I haven't got that detail to hand.
Thank you very much. Page 108. Yes, this is to do with council tax collection and business rate collection. So what's the percentage collection rate in this one for council tax, and secondly for business rates? It'd be interesting to know.
I'll take that away as well.
Thank you.
For 24-25.
Yes, please.
Yep.
Yes. 40. 2140. I'm trying to be quick. I'm trying to be quick, Chair. Well, I'm trying to just ask this one question, Chair, with your indulgence.
Papers, we could go to somebody else.
Okay, but I'm here now.
Oh, you're here now.
Yes, I am.
Welcome back. Go on.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, the property fund holdings. There's a reduced income of 751,000. Can we explain why? Drop in property funds income from 1,465,000 to 740,000. That's a 751,000 reduction. Can we explain why that is the case, please?
Sorry, which page were you on?
Sorry, I beg your pardon, Ellie. It's page 141. I'm looking at note 11, income receivable from property fund holdings. It's in the middle section.
So on this one, there are just reduced returns on the property fund investments.
Just a return on our investment, significant.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Well done. Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to go to page, I think page 81 about the is it non-domestic rate collection. Now we've got 93.8% as our achievement. I understand from the notes it says it's less than the mean elsewhere in the country. Now is there a reason why our rate collection, business rate collection, is lower than the mean for elsewhere? And obviously something's got to be above the mean and something's got to be below. But is that it does seem to suggest that it generally is lower than the mean around here in this borough. Is that correct? And is there a reason why our collection rate is lower?
That's something I would have to take away to the revenues and benefits team if I can, please.
All right, that's fine. Okay,
Thank you.
that's fine. I think is there anything else?
While you're flicking through your papers, we'll move
I'm
on to
just
somebody
reading my own
else.
paper, my notes in front of me. Thank you, Chairman. I'll let you go.
Right, Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple from me. The first one, very brief, on page 137, reference in note 7 to a peppercorn lease, which I think looks to be new this year. I just wondered what that was for. Happy to take a written answer on that. And the other question was on page 176, the debt impairment on the collection fund statement has gone up by about 700,000. So that's a fairly significant amount. And the auditors did comment about in previous years lack of a formal impairment policy. So I just wondered if that could be explained for us, please. Again, happy if that needs to be taken away. That's absolutely fine.
Let's go back to the first question. Any answers on that one, Ellie?
So was that page 137, the first question?
Yeah.
Yes. The 723,000.
Yes.
Yes. So as I mentioned in the briefing earlier, the IFRS 16 new accounting standard around leases required us to account for effectively assets that had not been accounted for previously, and that is the gain on entry, accounting entry relating to the gain on bringing those assets into the accounts.
Okay, right. So which assets were
The housing, the home homelessness houses that we don't own, but we use. Yeah. Okay.
And second question, Adam, just go through it again, please.
The bad debt provision. Yes. So on the collection fund, so of course we've got a new another financial year added to these figures. Therefore, the arrears figures have increased, and the impairment allowance has increased in line with that. It is quite significant, but we've got quite a robust process in terms of looking at the age of debts, the likely collectability, etc. And obviously that has also been audited.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions, or we'll move on? Councillor Noble.
Okay,
Over
very
to
quickly,
you.
thank you, Chair. Page 176, renewable energy under business rates, 2024-25. We've got 222,000, I presume that is spending. If you could let me know in future what that was all about and what that was for.
Yes, so it is classed as expenditure here because what we're doing effectively is taking that out of the collection fund and putting it into Boston's accounts. So this collection fund statement is the whole sort of pot, if you like, of business rates. But because Boston can retain 100% of that renewable energy, we have to put it through this account as an expenditure item to then bring it into Boston's accounts on the, as income.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ollie.
Right, we're going to move on. So the recommendation is approve the financial statements for 2024-25 in the brackets Appendix 1. Authorise the Section 151 officer in consultation with the chairman of the committee to approve any amendments if required after the committee date and prior to the official signing of the official statements. And authorise the Section 151 officer in consultation with the chairman of the committee to approve the letter of representation on its behalf once received from KPMG. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Danny. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Woodliff. Are we all in favour? Agreed. Thank you. The outcome is that we've recommended for approval. Okay. Everybody happy? We move on then to the item 4. That's the annual governance statement. This is on page 201 of the agenda pack, and I'm going to ask now Suzanne Rolfe to present the report. Suzanne, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, this is on page 201 of your agenda pack, and it is good practice for us to update you on the actions that
Can you get a bit closer to the microphone?
Yeah,
I can't
sorry.
hear you.
It's good practice for us to update you on the actions from the annual governance statement more often than every year. So you'll find on page 201 the 2 actions that we agreed in the last statement. One is around the medium-term financial statement, which you are aware of the new process around that. The second action is around proxy voting and virtual meetings, which the government are bringing forward some new arrangements. So that's just an update for the committee on those 2 actions, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Suzanne. Can you switch your microphone off for me? Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions on Suzanne's report? No? Okay. The committee is happy to note then the comments and the report. So that's finalised. Thank you very much. We'll move on. This is item 5 now. This is the quarter 2 25-26 risk report. And I'm going to ask Suzanne again to present the report to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is page 203. This is the usual quarterly reporting that you receive. I'll draw your attention to page 204. We have there paragraph 1.2. That's an update on the actions that we picked up from the 2 risk sessions that we had together in the last few months. I've just put an update there of the actions that we recorded and what we're going to do around those actions. If there are any additional actions that you want to raise, if there's anything that I've missed, then please let me know. Some of that is around mitigations around actions we talked around. So the lead officers are looking at mitigations and we'll bring those forward in your future quarterly reports. We've also got some risk appetite workshops that are happening fairly soon, and we'll be able to update you on the risk appetite. As part of that, we'll also do a thorough review of all of the risks. So there hasn't been very much change to report in Q2, but we expect that to change after we do the risk appetite work. Again, happy to take any questions.
I'll check the question for you, Suzanne. Looking at the pages 205 and 206, where you've got the not on target. If it's not on target, where is it then, and where is it at? And can we have any sort of little explanation in notes about where the actual thing's going to be on target, or what's the deadline going to be, or how has it been extended, or why it's not on target? You'd be just interested to know the reasoning behind it, so that everybody's a bit more clearer why things are not on target. Okay.
Yes, we usually include that in the appendix, but it's not in for this set of papers. What we're doing is reviewing those and working with the lead officers to find out that detail. Why isn't it on target? You'll remember it used to have a RAG rating, so they're all amber at the moment, and we're going to work to make sure that they don't become red, and that we can give you an update in Q3 on exactly what is happening. I would expect most of those to move back into target, but we'll give you a comprehensive update on that in Q3.
Thank you. Councillor Izard.
Thank you for this report. Just going back to page 205, the Boston Strategic Risk. There's a lot identified, but the Landlords Reform Bill has not been identified as a risk. Should that be, as it's now passing through?
Yes, that is something that we are looking at as part of the risk review for Q3, and it has been raised, I think, at a previous committee, perhaps of overview. But yes, the service area are aware of that, and I would expect that to feed through into your future reports.
Councillor Cantwell.
Thank you, Chair. I kind of wanted to drill down more on BBC 29 on Appendix A. And I really wanted to know more about this significant delay, and also more importantly, who said this project should be halted and the reason why it should be halted, because it seems to me to be the most vital project in this council, considering that if our IT infrastructure is compromised, then it would devastate every single operation we have.
Yeah, I can bring you a written response on that. I can ask for the manager to explain the detail behind that, but I can reassure you that that is moving forward now.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Suzanne? No? We'll move on. Thank you, Suzanne, for your report there. Item 6 is the midterm treasury report on page 221 of your pack. I'm going to ask Sean now to present that report. Sean, over to you.
I couldn't see the red light, sorry. Thank you, Chair. You have before you the overarching report, the 2025-26 Midterm Treasury Report on page 221, and the purpose of the report is to provide members with an update on Treasury management performance and activity to ensure best practice is maintained. I propose to go to Appendix 1 on page 228, which is the main report. So paragraph 1, Treasury management. The council operates a balanced revenue budget, which broadly means cash raised during the year will meet its cash expenditure. Part of the treasury management operations ensure this cash flow is adequately planned, with surplus monies being invested in low-risk counterparties, providing adequate liquidity initially before considering optimising investment returns. Paragraph 2, by way of introduction, the report has been written in accordance with the requirements of the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy's Code of Practice on treasury management. And you'll see there at the bottom of page 228, the 5 bullet points are those 5 effectively required, the 5 requirements. This report, the midterm treasury report, is the bullet point 3, and this report is the usual quarterly report that you would receive, but in view of the fact that it's the midterm position as well, this report will continue on to council for them to consider the report. Paragraph 3 on page 229 refers to provides an economic update and interest rate forecast, which is being provided to us by our external treasury advisors, MUFG. And at paragraph 3.1, economic update, the 3 main points there is that gross domestic product was 0.3% at Q1, and interestingly, that has now reduced to 0.1 at Q2, and the main reason for the reduction was as a result of the cyber attack at Jaguar Land Rover, which halted production. 3-month year-on-year rate of average earnings growth has fallen to 4.8%, and consumer price index fallen to 3.8%. During the first half year, there's been 4 monetary policy committee meetings, and in the May meeting, the base rate was reduced from 4.5% to 4.25%, and then it was further reduced in the August meeting to 4%. Section 3.2 on page 230 is the interest rate forecasts provided to us by MUFG, our external treasury advisors, and you'll see there that they are forecasting that the Bank of England base rate at December 2025 will be 4%, as it is now, and at March, end of the financial year, expecting it to be 3.75%. Section 5 refers to the council's capital position and their prudential indicators. And section 5.1 is the prudential indicators for capital expenditure. So you'll see there we had an approved budget for the year of just under 38.5 million. Latest revised budget is just over 38.5 million. Actual expenditure at the 30th of September was just over £8 million, and the forecast estimated outturn is just over £37 million. And paragraph 5.2 shows how that financing of that capital expenditure has been arranged, and that is split between the external grants, capital reserves, other reserves, and section 106. And the final figures on that top table shows the borrowing requirement. That is your capital expenditure that hasn't been financed from any of those particular sources of finance, and therefore is effectively going to be your prudential borrowing and will increase your council's capital financing requirement. Section 5.3 refers to the council's capital financing requirement and forecasts what those levels are expected to be based on the revised expenditure. So you'll see there the top figure, total CFR approved budget of 19.610 million. Latest revised 19.5. Actual expenditure at the moment, that capital financing requirement is 18.3 million. And the estimated outturn is going to be just under 19.5. There are limits in relation to the limits to borrowing activity. Gross external borrowing should not, except in the short term, exceed the total of the CFR in the preceding year, plus your estimates of any additional CFR for 25-26 and future 2 financial years. So the table at the top of page 233 shows your actual borrowing of £1 million. So you are considerably below the capital financing requirement, historic unfinanced capital expenditure. Section 6 refers to the council's borrowing position. So you have a borrowing requirement of £18.306 million. You've got external borrowing of £1 million, therefore you are internally borrowed by £17.306 million. That's where you've utilised the council's own cash balances rather than taking out external borrowing from external providers. And the table at the bottom of page 233 provides an analysis of your borrowing costs. Initially at the top, you see the budget at Q2, you had the State Street Lobo loan with a budget of £55.7 million for Q2. As I will show you in a moment, under a separate section, that Lobo loan has been repaid. And a PWLB loan has been taken out in its place. So the actual external borrowing costs at Q2 was just over £41,000. We had an annual budget of £111,250, and the forecast outturn is just over £65,000. The chart on the bottom of page 234 provides you a graph of PWLB rates in the market. And you can see from that chart that the PWLB rates have been relatively flat, probably slightly marginally on the rise, but overall on a grand scale of things, relatively flat. Paragraph 7 on page 235 provides the information in relation to debt rescheduling. As you will be aware, the council had a £1 million Lobo loan with State Street at a rate of 11.125%, which was taken out on the 29th of January 1991 for a period of 60 years. The full circumstances around the loan were subject to a report by the Chief Executive and submitted to Cabinet on the 21st of April 2010, so don't propose to go through those details again. In June 2025, the council received a revised offer of £1.5 million all in to prematurely repay the loan, subject to repayment being made on or before the 31st of July. This was a one-time offer because the owners of the loan were undertaking a restructuring of the fund's investments. Following discussions between myself and the Section 151 officer, the decision was made by the Section 151 officer under delegated authority to repay the loan with the one-off payment of £1.5 million. A new loan was taken out with the PWLB rate at a rate of 4.81% for 5 years, with a view to reborrowing after the 5 years at a lower rate due to the interest rate forecasts showing that rates were likely to fall. An analysis of the financial savings of the repayment of that loan over the remaining life of the loan shows that we're likely to save in the region of £660,000. Section 8 on page 236 refers to compliance with Treasury and Prudential indicators, and I can report that during quarter ended 30th September 2025, the Council has operated within Treasury and Prudential indicators set at the Council's Treasury Management Strategy Statement. And the Director of Finance, Section 151 officer, reports that no difficulties are envisaged for the current or future years in complying with these indicators. Section 9 refers to the annual investment strategy, which was approved by Council on the 3rd of March 2025, which set the Council's priorities as the security of capital, followed by the liquidity, and then yield in that order. The graph on the top of page 237 provides you details of the investment rates that have been available in the market for the first 6 months of the financial year. And you can see there that in line with the base rates, those rates have been falling. So the returns to the councils are gradually reducing. The table at the bottom of page 237 and the top of page 238 provides details of the council's investments at the 30th of September, and they totaled just over £31 million, which is marginally lower than the quarter one figure, which was £32.5 million. Page 239 refers to the council's property fund investments. Property fund investments were purchased in 2016 and 2018, and the overall change in the combined net asset value for these funds during the first full half year of the current financial year has been an increase of just under £42,000. In relation to the M&G fund, which is currently being liquidated, the council has now received £3,880,000 back of its initial investment, leaving just under £120,000 still to be returned. The table on page 240 provides further information in relation to those council's property fund investments. So you'll see there revised purchase costs taking into account the returns from M&G of £17.1 million and the net asset value at the 30th of September of just over £15 million. So an overall reduction in value at that time of just over £2 million. Table on page 241 provides a summary of the investment income received against the budget and the forecast outturn split between the Treasury investments and the property fund investments. Treasury investments has achieved a rate of 4.95%, and the property funds 3.12%. So giving a combined rate overall of just under 4.4%, 4.3256. Paragraph 10 provides an overall summary of the net treasury position. In other words, the income that the council has received and the borrowing costs on top of that. So you'll see from that table, at quarter two, the net treasury position shows a combined favourable variance of 462,000 and the forecast outturn being a favourable variance of 392,000. What I should state there is you will see there also that the M&G property fund liquidation distributions, we've had a 216,000 return in the current year and the forecast outturn of 219,000. That will be used to reduce the council's capital financing requirements, so will be used to finance the minimum revenue provision. So that would then leave an overall favourable variance of 170,000 for other purposes. Section 11 refers to changes in risk appetite, and it is reported there's been no change in risk appetite during the first half of the financial year. This will be kept under review when considering global markets and forecasts for interest rates. The recommendation is that Audit and Governance Committee note the report, Treasury activity as detailed in Appendix 1, and make any comments for consideration by Council at their meeting on the 12th of January 2026. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sean. Every time you give your report, I get this very much confident glow in my head that I feel so comfortable and so secure that when you're telling us all this information, I really do think you're like Mr. Moneypenny, I really do. You really do give me a lot of confidence in what you say, and it really is, you do a super job, and I thank you for your report because it really is interesting, and you talk through it very well, and it's very comprehensive, and it's very difficult sometimes to understand it all, but the way you bring it across, it's quite easy to follow, and I thank you for that. So well done. Let's take any questions now. Mr. Noble, Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, firstly, I wholeheartedly agree with the report. I love reading these reports. I think they're so clear. And I thought it was very pleasing that we've still got a 4.326% combined return on the property funds and treasury. So it's just ahead of inflation, which is good. First question, this is on page 223. And obviously we paid off the 15.5 million 50-year public works loan board loan, didn't we? Was it prohibitively expensive to pay off the 1 million loan completely with PWLB, the one that we took over from State Street?
Sorry about that. The debt repayment terms in relation to repaying loans is different from PWLB and the State Street. It's at the end of the day, it's at the discretion of State Street as to whether they effectively wanted to redeem the loan. But in relation to Public Works Loan Board, there is a right to prematurely repay the loans if the market conditions dictate or your cash balances dictate that that's what you want to, or you could reschedule, effectively repay those loans that you'd already taken out and take out different loans to reprofile the debt, for example. But at the time for the PWLB, yes, the market circumstances were favourable for the council, and the debt was repaid with a significant discount, which is contributing to your revenue budget each financial year for 10 years. The position in relation to the State Street Lobo loan was the Lobo loans they have the right to increase the loan rate. They're not likely to want to reduce the loan rate. And that's the only time really that we have a chance to change the terms of the loan. If they did come along and say, we want to increase the loan to 13%, that is the only point in time we'd be able to say, no, we don't want to do that, we'll repay. But we do have the option to repay if we choose to accept their terms. We did ask, we've reviewed these terms on a regular basis, and I think it was around March, the premium that they wanted was in the region of £800,000, which wasn't advantageous, cost effective to do that. But because of them, they're the administrators of that pension fund were reorganising the fund. What they wanted to do was they was rewriting their governance processes, and I get the impression that this was the only Lobo loan that they had, and therefore they probably wanted to get rid of it to reduce the governance requirements.
Yeah, a couple more points. Right, given that we initially borrowed 15.5 million to invest in the property funds, but our property fund assets are now worth about 2 million less than when we purchased them in 2017 to 18. So with the benefit of hindsight, do you think it was a mistake to spend that much money investing in the property funds, and would it perhaps have been better to invest less money, but for commercial properties, for example, in the Boston area, where you get a definite rental return? Do you have any opinion on that?
The position in 2016 and 2018, when the investments were made in property funds, interest rates and returns on those were extremely low. We had interest rates of 0.25% and at one point 0.1%. So we were getting significant benefits from those property fund investments. And at the time we were getting appreciation on the property fund cycle at that time, where valuations were going up. Then we got COVID come along, whereby that's when the interest rates significantly dropped. But what happens then when interest rates drop, the market, property prices will go up because borrowing is cheap. But once we got to the stage where interest rates shot up, the market cycle goes the other way, and effectively your property prices go down because demand for property is going down because it's very expensive to borrow. But overall, we've done an analysis on the investments over time, and we are still taking into account the income that we've received and what we would have received on treasury investments. We are in a positive situation still in relation to that, even taking into account the reductions in value. We are looking, continually monitoring these property fund investments with a view to exiting those if the market conditions become favourable. But at the moment, yes, we are keeping them under regular review, and the council has benefited from them.
Thank you. The last one. This is, I want to clarify this because at full council, it was told by the S151 officer that we have no debts, we have no loans, but that's not the case, is it? This loan from State Street was a 60-year loan, I understand, and there's still 26 years to pay off, right? And I know that we've borrowed the PWB for, is it 5 years at 4.81%, and then we can review that. But can you please confirm to every councillor here that there's still 26 years left on this loan?
Sorry. No, we've repaid the State Street loan. So
No. Sorry, I mean the PWB. We've replaced that with the Public Works Loan Board loan.
At the moment, correct? Yes, we've replaced that with a £1 million PWLB loan for 5 years. And then the position will be reviewed again in 5 years as to whether we need to reborrow, or based on the council's financial circumstances, we may not need to borrow. It will depend on what the council's financial position is at that time.
Thank you. So we can be clear that that loan with the PW Works Loan Board that we initially take 5 years, that is the sum total. It's not 26 years left to pay on it.
No.
Thank you. That's just because it wasn't clear from the papers. Thank you very much.
Councillor Cantwell.
Thank you, Chair. Just two quick questions from me, and I'm happy to take written answers on them. On page 223, I was just hoping there could be a bit of commentary on the M&G Property Fund liquidation and why it's different from the budget and the actual. And then the other one was on page 232, and why is there, when can we expect the Section 106 monies to conclude, because it says to be done this year, but I'm just interested, is there a set timeline on when this has to be done?
Put yourself back on again, thank you.
Yeah, paragraph 2.9 in relation to the M&G property fund liquidation. The reason why there was no budget is because we're not aware of what the timing, we don't know what the timing of the repayments of the assets that are being sold by the M&G fund. So we didn't budget for anything, but we've now received 216,000 in the first half year. So effectively that's reduced your property fund investments by 216,000. And it's now showing in your treasury investments because the money's been reinvested by myself in other local authority investments or the council's instant access accounts, etc., earning interest elsewhere. I missed the second point. So what was the page number, please?
It mentions on page 232 the Section 106 monies of over 1 million, and I was just wondering if there was a set time frame or what those monies related to project wise.
Yeah, I'd have to take that away. That's how the capital programme is being financed. They were going to be using just over £1 million worth of Section 106 money, and that effectively what has happened there is the actual expenditure shows that none of the expenditure to date has used Section 106 money, and also that the estimated outturn is saying that the Section 106 money isn't going to be used for capital expenditure. So yes, I'll have to take that question away to ascertain what the change has been in respect to that Section 106 financed element.
Any more questions before we move on? Councillor Izard, then Councillor Woodliff.
Yeah, wonderful report. I agree with everyone else. On page 237, I see that there's 3 that have come up with the maturity date, and they were very good yields. Are we likely to get those sort of yields in there with them being replaced?
Yes, obviously when council place these deposits, they are for a fixed period of time. And then when those funds are returned, they go into the council's cash balances, and then I will consider the cash flow forecasts to ascertain whether that money can be relent and what sort of a period of time it can be relent. I can say at the moment, based on the market rates, we won't be getting rates in excess of 5%. Base rate is at the moment at 4%, and the market rates for 1-year deposits are around 4.4% at the moment.
Councillor Woodliffe.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Sean, I think it's an excellent report, as always. I'm looking at the bottom of page 235 at the figures given there. There's essentially projections, aren't they? So the interest payments to State Street loan, the saving, is essentially a projection of how much it would cost if it were to carry on for 26 years. And the new PWL loan interest payments of 4.81, well, that would be 1.2 million if it carried on for the 26 years. That's the idea, isn't it? And that's the principle behind it. So these are essentially, it's a comparison, isn't it? A projection and comparison between running the State Street loan as it would have been as compared with switching to a Public Works Loan Board loan. Yeah, can I follow up as well, please?
Yes, the figures at the bottom of the page 235 effectively shows a comparison of repaying the State Street loan and reborrowing from the PWLB for a same term. So that's what the savings would be over the same term. But obviously we borrowed from the PWLB at 4.81%, and the reason for doing that is because we think in 5 years' time the rates will be lower. So if the rates are lower and you do need to borrow the £1 million again at that time, the savings will be higher than the 661. But if the interest rates are higher than 4.81, then the savings won't be as high as the 661. But it's just comparing like with like there so that you're not distorting the. Yep.
I understand the idea behind it. I know that when the when we took out the £15 million loan, I think was it from the PWR to buy the property funds. I think that I can remember. I think it was Christian Marshall, who was a previous Section 151, so that the government had approached her with the idea of a repayment loan on that, or a payment process that they were obviously nervous that people wouldn't be able to repay. And I did wonder whether, you know, if we would set up, say, a repayment process for that 1 million, say, like £200,000 a year or whatever, then the debt itself, the loan itself would decline over that period. Is that a feasible option? Or I know that Christine Marshall rejected the government's and out of line. She said it wasn't necessary for us for a repayment program or the 15 million. It proved to be the best thing, didn't it? Because it worked out very well, and you were able to demolish it. But with the £1 million loan, it's not a lot of money. I did wonder whether we built a repayment program into that. We'd make an even greater savings, dare I say. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, in relation to the repayment, at the moment, now it's with the PWLB, we can repay whenever we want on that loan. After 12 months, you can't repay within the first 12 months. So if the council, we have taken a maturity loan, but if over the remaining, for example, if you do take out that loan again in 5 years' time, you don't have to take out a maturity loan, which is where the loan is redeemed in full on maturity date. You can take a loan out on an annuity or equal instalments of principal and interest basis, which does actually reduce the principal over time.
Thank you. We're going to move on. Right. The recommendation is that the Audit and Governance Committee note this report, the Treasury activities detailed in Appendix 1, and make any comments which we have done for consideration by the Council at the meeting on the 12th of January 2026. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Izard. Seconder? Councillor Drayton. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Right. Thank you. Moved. Thank you very much, Sean. As usual, great report. Well done. And thank you very much. So we go on to now item 7, which is the counter fraud, bribery and corruption policy on page 243. And I'm going to ask the Director of Finance and the Section 151 officer, Russell Stone.
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Yeah, so this is a refresh of a policy we've already got in place. It's a really important part of the council's governance framework, and I think you'll see from the report that a lot of work has gone into redrafting it, although I can take no credit for any of that whatsoever. I think having reviewed the policy, I'm satisfied that it covers all the areas I would expect it to. It follows the best practice guidance that's out there. And I'm happy to recommend it to the committee, but we'll take any questions there may be.
I'm just going to go to page 255, Russell, because on there it talks about Audit and Governance Committee to review the assessment of fraud risks and potential harm to South Holland District Council. Well, unfortunately, I don't think I'm sitting in that council at the moment. So I'd like you to change that, please, to Boston Borough Council, if we can. Or is it the partnership three councils? I mean, it needs amending to something, doesn't it?
Yes, apologies, Chairman. What I should have said in the introduction as well is we have tried really hard to align this policy across the three councils. Clearly aligned it a little bit too well in this version, and we'll definitely get that amended to the correct authority.
Thank you. At least no apostrophe is missing anyway, wasn't it? That's the main thing. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Izard, followed then by Adam.
Yeah, just one question on page 255, the internal audits. Is that a 6-monthly internal audit? And do you do spot checks randomly just to check?
Yes, through you, Chairman. Yes, I think this is a more general point around the use of internal audit to ensure that the wider control framework is robust and controls are adequate to minimise the risk of fraud. Obviously, what we would do on a cyclical basis as well is undertake a review of our fraud prevention measures, but it wouldn't necessarily be on a set timescale. It would be as was required or as the various reports were going through or audits were being undertaken.
I think Mark might come when he comes into his report. He might just cover that point anyway, because they do the internal audit anyway, don't they, for us? So we can look at that point then. Adam, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Russell, you'll have heard me make this point elsewhere, but I just wonder on page 254, where we talk about a zero tolerance of fraud, corruption and theft, whether then our language is strong enough when we talk about aims. It may be, perhaps should be we will rather than we aim. That's just a presentation thing, really.
Yes, through you, Chairman. Yes, I've been mulling over the wording since our last conversation, which may have been a council that's just been mentioned in the report. I mean, as you say, it's a little bit of a nuance, isn't it? Because we want zero fraud, but then we have an aim. So I think I've been trying to think of some better wording. I haven't quite got there yet, but that's maybe something we can pick up outside.
I think he's talking about the emphasis needs to be stronger, and I think that's where we come from a committee. That obviously we need to make sure that people are aware that that there's a strong element of checking and balancing and all that sort of thing. Okay. Any other questions? Anybody else? Are you okay? Yeah. Anybody else? No. Right. So we can move on then. So the recommendation is that the counter fraud, bribery and corruption policies approved by the Audit and Governance Committee and the authority be delegated to the Section 151 officer to review and make minor amendments to the policy to reflect changes in legislation, statutory guidance or contract details. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Scoot, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Drayton, all in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Well done. Thank you. Let's go on to item 8. So, done 8. Beg your pardon. Of course we have. Yes. Oh, it was procurement. Oh, it's the apostrophe got in the way. Right, let's go on to item 9 then, the information governance annual audit update. So I'm going to ask the Group Information Manager and Deputy Data Protection Officer, Richard Steele. Hello, Richard, welcome, and to present your report. Over to you, young man.
Good evening. I'm here to present the annual information governance statement or report. Just for your awareness, those of you who got the report, there is an omission at paragraph 2.5 where I refer to an increase. It's marginal, and there's a gap. I've missed the whole word, not just an apostrophe, and the word is increase that's missing. So there's a marginal increase which is missing from the report. So in general, the annual report presented to the Audit and Governance Committee provides an overview of Boston Council's compliance with key information regulations. Those regulations include the Data Protection Act, Environmental Information Act, and the Freedom of Information Act for the period 1st of April 2024 to the 31st of March 2025. I'm not going to go exactly all the way through the report, but I will pick out some key highlights. The performance of the report, so section 2.1.6, which I have to jump around on this to get the page number, I'm afraid. Sorry? Thank you. On page 335, the council received 724 information requests, with 87 of those under the environmental information regulations. Of these, 710 were validated as requests, and the council maintains a high standard of responsiveness, with 98.3% of requests answered within statutory deadlines, exceeding the ICO's good threshold of 95% within deadlines. For 5 months in that period, performance was 100%, as outlined at paragraph 2.1.1. I'd like to highlight the use of exemptions and advice. The council provides we do provide advice when we do respond to FOI requests, and we do redact some FOI requests. In total, 99 requests were redacted, mainly for personal data and for law enforcement reasons. Advice was provided to requests in 284 of all cases. 47 requests were refused outright due to information already being published or scheduled for published. Internal reviews and complaints, only 3 internal reviews requests were received. That's outlined at paragraphs 2.1.10. No ICO decision notices were issued against the council. Paragraphs 2.2 to 2.211 refer to data protection. The council's reported 53 data incidents, none of which resulted in harm or claims. No incidents met the threshold to report to the ICO. 16 subject access requests or subject rights requests were processed, with some citizens showing confusion noted between SARS, DSARS and FOI, 2 different bits of legislation. We've obviously refused on that basis. The council also handles third-party requests for personal data. That would be from organisations like the police, the HMRC, the DWP, and the IG team, the information governance team, will filter those requests and make sure that we are complying lawfully with those requesters. From a governance and assurance perspective, the council's information governance team continues to monitor compliance, provides guidance and supports data sharing and test the impact assessments of new processes. No legal or financial liabilities arose from non-compliance, and all risks are managed through operational registers. From a transparency perspective, the council can be seen to demonstrate transparency by publishing information and supporting public engagement through its access to information regulations. In conclusion, the council remains committed to a high standard of information governance, statutory compliance and continuous improvement. The committee is recommended to note the report.
Thank you, Richard. Are there any questions from the Councillor Pryke?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm aware of other councils receiving far more FOI requests than we appear to. And often they are quite or very vexatious, but they still have to be dealt with. I'm also aware that this council has in the past had extremely vexatious residents who've gone out of their way to make life as difficult as possible for this council. Okay, the information goes back to April last year, but is this a falling off in numbers we've had that we're, in effect, we're answering the questions pretty well, so we're not prompting semi-vexatious people to have another go at us? Or is this the sort of level that you'd expect? And I don't know what East Lindsey or South Holland get, but you probably do.
So when compared to East Lindsey and South Holland, Boston, we have the same kind of numbers. So as a group, I'm a group manager or manage the group, the IG group who look after all three. I think in the same period, there was 2,100 FOIs across the councils, plural. In terms of vexatious requests, the team manage quite closely those people that are manifestly using FOI as a mechanism to affect burden on the council. We will refuse some on that basis, and we will perhaps steer people to use the websites or use alternative mechanisms to get that data. But that is managed because one of the key aspects of the IG team is to reduce the burden on the council by making sure that we answer them succinctly, clearly. We don't give too much that they then want to ask more and more questions, but we need to maintain that transparency to meet the ICO guidelines.
I'm wondering, are the numbers sort of on a downward trend, an upward trend, or are they all pretty much the same?
The numbers are on a slight upward trend year on year. They have been for the last 5 years. People are being encouraged by organisations like the BBC and whoever to make FOI requests. It is being, and I use this word very carefully, and the ICO do recognise FOI is being used to weaponise to affect organisations to self-reflect using FOI. So there is a new culture of people using it, and more recently the use of AI by our citizens to make more complex FOI requests is creating additional burden as well.
Any other questions for Richard? Adam, we'll start with you, then we'll go with Councillor Izard afterwards.
Just a very quick one. Thank you for the report, Richard. Just on page 325 at paragraph 2.1.8, the bullet down, did we redact anything for health and safety concerns? And maybe that's parent bullets, perhaps. What I mean.
Apologies, I will have to check that. I think that's a number missed instead of a word. Sorry.
Councillor Izard, followed by Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Chair. Again, on page 325, so the council received 3 requests for internal reviews. How are those reviews completed? What is the process to complete a review? And the second one, just for anyone's information, when a freedom of information request comes in about a councillor, is that councillor informed beforehand? So 2.
Okay, I can answer the first question. So when an FOI request comes in, it's normally dealt with by one of the team members, and if it is dealt with myself, the person that undertakes the internal review is a different officer who then goes often and looking for the source information and reevaluates whether that was released correctly or incorrectly, and it will revisit each decision in terms of why elements were redacted or refused. That's the first part of the question. There was a second question, I missed it, sorry. Oh, sorry.
It was just if a freedom of information request was made against councillors' actions or a reason for a named councillor, would that councillor be informed that a freedom of information request has been made by a member of the public?
in most cases, they would be generally asked for the information, because the way freedom of information works, it asks for any recorded information. And if the only source to get the recorded information was to approach the councillor, we would have to approach the councillor. We wouldn't go into councillor mail to obtain the answer without their permission or knowledge. So I think hopefully that answers your question.
Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, it's good to see the report. I will support it. We note it. It just, when you look at, you know, the rates, 100%, 98%, I wonder if we have a similar rate to how successful in responding to this, you know, freedom of information, because they are a key. The response would be key to the trust of the public in how we run, you know, the council and how the council performs as well.
Might be a little bit confused, but could you reword the question? Sorry.
The question is, because we have the rate of how many, you know, freedom of information we receive in a year, in a month. Do we measure the success when we respond to these people who request the freedom of information? Do we follow that and see how satisfied they are with our answer, and we record that they are satisfied? Because I can send a request, and if the answer is I'm not satisfied, I don't have to bother. Do we follow that and make ourselves that we're credible and giving you the right answers?
At the moment, we don't. We don't follow up with feedback.
Because I said it's very important to follow up, and we know where we stand, and that our residents are satisfied with the answer we provide them. So it's, I mean, you receive a complaint, you deal with the complaint, you answer the complaint, and you follow up. Are you satisfied and happy? Yes, thank you. And I mean,
I'm going to ask John Medler to come in here, because I think it needs clarifying for your information.
Yeah, just to clarify that the information that is the information we hold. There isn't a choice matter in what we're releasing. That we either hold the record or we don't. So if someone was dissatisfied with the release of the information, they could request that through an internal review, and ultimately, if they still weren't satisfied, they could escalate that further to the ICO for them to investigate. So there isn't, you know, if someone asks for a particular record, we either hold it or we don't, and we provide it to them. Thank you.
Any more questions for Richard? They called you Russell then. Any more questions for Richard? No? Richard, thank you very much for that report. So just for the Audit and Governance Committee to note what's been said, it's all been recorded. Everybody happy? Yeah? Right, item 10 then is the work programme, which is on page 331. Are there any questions on the work programme? Anyone want to raise anything on that? No, so we're also seeing, oh, we've got Councillor Pryke.
It's not a question about the work programme, but it's about the workload.
Horrendous.
I'm relatively new to audit and governance, but I'm struck by the fact that this committee has to do a lot more work than, say, scrutiny or planning and even licensing. And yes, most of our reports will go on to full council, and they might get further consideration at full council. But I'm guessing the timetable of meetings has been set in stone for history. But we do have long meetings, and there is a tendency, not only at tonight's meeting, but at earlier meetings, that we've rushed items in order to get through the agenda. And I'm wondering whether this committee should make a recommendation to the officers, to council itself, that there should be more meetings of A&G in a municipal year, with appropriate adjustments to arrangements for members, of course.
Well, let me just say, firstly, I don't think we rush anything at all, because, I mean, we can sit here and ask 1,001 questions, and sometimes we go around in circles if we're not careful. So I think people ask the right questions, and I think there comes a point where there's no more questions to ask. I think we have enough meetings as it is, and I think, quite frankly, if we have any more meetings, I think most of us will be living here if you're not careful. And I don't want to be here every night of the week, but I understand what you're saying. I think, all right, it's a long evening, and it's a big agenda for this one. Not every meeting is the same. They're not all as big as this. And sometimes you can get through reports quite quickly and there's no questions at all. It's been like this for quite some time, and I think everybody's quite reasonably happy. I think to try and do more meetings, I think you'll be dragging more people out every night to come here, and then probably I don't think it would gain anything. I think the meetings that we have here, in my view, is that we've listened to everybody's questions, we've heard what the officers have got to say. There's no more questions I think we could ask. If we're just asking questions for the sake of it, we just want to make sure that we're getting the assurance from the officers on all the issues and the points. And I think sometimes our questions do go beyond the assurance point, but I don't stop that because I like people to have discussion. But we're here really as a committee to get assurances from the officers and from our auditors, etc., on all the points that we're not happy about, or we find that there's some issues that we're not comfortable with. But by and large, I think these meetings, to my view, are well subscribed to. They're quite detailed, but at the same time, we get through a lot of stuff. And I don't think any more meetings would gain anything from that. I think we'd end up just coming here for the sake of it. That's my point of view. I don't know whether anybody else would want to agree or disagree with that. I'm quite happy to take any comments on that question.
I won't keep on. All I can say is I put a huge amount of time into reading this report. I reckon I must have spent, well, I almost think 12 hours reading it through. I spend more time reading these reports, the type of thing, than any other report, and we cover in the council pretty well, because it is so important. This is the most important committee of all, in my opinion. Much more important than scrutiny. This is the key one, the finance committee, if you like, and we have to get it right. And so I do spend a huge amount of time, as I'm sure everybody else in this room has. So I can say, I probably wouldn't want any more meetings, but my goodness, when they stand on my desk, I nearly had a heart attack, as I'm sure others may have. Thank you, Chairman.
I hear what you say, and yeah, 300 odd pages is a lot to read. What we might consider is looking at breaking it down and getting to certain members to read certain points of the reports and others read other points, so we can actually go across the whole lot without sort of reading the 300 pages. I read the 300 pages as the chairman because I need to be fully understanding what's going on and making sure that all the right questions are asked. But if you find it too difficult, then if you come and talk to me, we can make an arrangement for you to read part of it or some of it or whatever. So not a problem. And at the end of the day, the officers are very clear and thorough in their reports, so the questions can come out of their reports anyway, and you might pick things up like South Holland, which I did on page 255 or whatever it was. But I have to say this to all of you here this evening. Thank you very much for, first of all the officers for their reports. They're very thorough, very detailed, and also I'd like to thank KPMG for being here to give their report as well. I have to say that we have a very good meeting. All our meetings are very good. They are long, but at the end of the day, they are important, and that's the main thing. And we do have good questions. And that's the important thing from my point of view, making sure we've got good questions, that are asking the right questions and getting the assurance that we're looking for in this committee. I'd like to thank all the committee members for being here as well. And, it is a long meeting, but at the end of the day, I think we've achieved a lot. We've heard a lot. And I'd like to thank you for being here till this time of night. But I feel quite proud and privileged to be on this committee and chairing it, knowing the fact that we are doing an excellent job to all of you, and to all our officers are doing an excellent job. And all the reports we've had this evening, as far as I'm concerned, has given me the confidence that we're going in the right direction. Everything is now ticking all the boxes. And I'd like to welcome Russell to the meeting, because Russell is our new finance director and 151 officer, and we're going to have some great meetings and we're going to continue going forward. Thank you for your questions, everybody. Thank you for your attendance, and I look forward to seeing you in January. Thank you. Safe journey home.